Hello friends and welcome to Zoosday Tuesday. Last time we met, we were talking about bird migration, and here's an update. We are in peak migration with over 67,000 birds flying over Pueblo County. Have you been keeping your outdoor lights off to help birds migrate? If so, give us a thumbs up on our YouTube channel. And you can join our conversation about conservation by adding your questions and comments to our chat box. And we'll talk about them at the end of the show.
So, since we last met, a new bird has joined the crowds of birds crossing over Pueblo County, and it is the black-headed grosbeak. Let's see, Anne, if we can listen to what the black-headed grosbeak sounds like.
Yep, I'm at All About Birds, and I have the call all ready. We're going to listen to the song that it sings in Mexico in the winter. Some people say it sounds a little like a robin. Now, let's listen to its flight call. Just a little chirp. So, if they're flying overhead at night, you'll just hear that little chirp, but they fly in big flocks of 50, so you'll probably hear a lot of them.
Yeah, so this interesting bird winters down in Mexico where it eats monarch butterflies, who also winter down in Mexico. Most birds leave the monarchs alone because they're actually poisonous, and they usually taste pretty bad, and they might make the bird sick, but there are a few animals that are immune to their poison, like the black-headed grosbeak.
That's right, but the monarchs have left Mexico now and are headed north to mate and lay their eggs in North America. The monarchs are coming, and they have an amazing migration story. They have left Mexico, and now their number one predator, the black-headed grosbeak, is right on their tail.
Yeah, so the monarchs and the grosbeaks are just one example of animals that are connected to each other and that move with the changing of the seasons. Lots of plants and animals are making changes now that spring has arrived and the weather is warmer. You may have even noticed this in your backyard or your local park. The study of when these changes occur is called phenology. And we're going to see a video now of some of the changes that are happening now that spring has arrived.
The monarchs are coming! Let's see how monarchs migrate.
In the spring, monarchs leave their overwintering sites, mating and laying eggs as they migrate north and east. By May and June, the children and grandchildren of overwintering monarchs have arrived at the furthest reaches of their breeding range. Monarchs breed continually through the months of June, July, and August. Typically, there are 2 to 3 generations of monarchs seen in the summer months. It is important to provide a variety of native nectar plants and milkweed during these months. Beginning in August, monarchs in both the east and the west begin migrating. Unlike the spring migration, they will complete this journey in one generation, arriving in their overwintering sites by November. Monarch butterflies spend November through early March overwintering in the forested mountains of central Mexico or in sheltered groves along the coast of California.
And following right behind the monarchs are the black-headed grosbeaks. Earthworms migrate too. They spend all winter asleep in the slime-coated ball deep underground. They return when the snow melts and the frozen ground thaws. And look who's waiting for them, Mr. Robin. Robins have been eating leftover fruit from last summer all winter long. When spring arrives, they need high-protein food to feed their babies, and worms are just the right thing. You might see one hopping on the lawn when suddenly he turns his head as if to look a little closer. Then he plunges his beak into the ground and pulls out a big, juicy worm. And look who just arrived from the eastern plains. It's the miller moths. They spent all winter as cutworms feeding on grass and other plants. In the spring, they have changed into miller moths and fly west towards the mountains in search of flower nectar. These 4 birds will be flying over Pueblo tonight. They are all insect eaters who depend on the annual miller moth migration for food.
That's a lot of migration. The birds seem to be paired up perfectly with the insects that they eat. But what about the insects? Are they paired up with the plants that they need?
Yes, so monarchs need a special kind of flower called milkweed. That is the plant that the monarch caterpillars feed on before they turn into butterflies. They eat the leaves, and the leaves are actually poisonous. And as they eat the poisonous leaves, they also become poisonous too. That way, the birds learn to leave them alone, except for the black-headed grosbeak that I mentioned earlier. He can eat those monarchs, but even he has to only eat a few. Otherwise, he might start feeling a little sick too.
Okay. After the monarch caterpillars become butterflies, they no longer eat milkweed leaves. As adults, they need wildflowers with nectar. Nectar is a sweet, sugary substance that's liquidy, and they slurp it up with a straw that comes out of their mouth called a proboscis. So you can help monarchs by planting milkweed for the caterpillars and wildflowers for the adult butterflies.
And guess what, Anne? Here at the zoo, we will be selling plants that support monarchs and other pollinators this weekend on Saturday, May 20th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Last year, sadly, monarch butterflies were considered endangered because they were facing habitat loss and climate change. But you can help monarchs by planting milkweed and other wildflowers, so you can be part of the change.
Now let's take a look at a great website called Journey North, which tracks the monarch's journey while we wait for questions to come in. Remember, you can be part of our conversation about conservation by just typing your question or comment into the chat box. Are there any friends out there that have already become a part of Journey North? Let us know. So here we are at the website Journey North, and you can see they track lots of different animals and plants. Hummingbirds, monarchs, robins, red-winged blackbirds, all kinds of things. So if you're interested in any of those, you just go to the website and they give you the directions for how to participate in their study of each animal. We're going to look at the maps now and look at how the monarchs and the milkweed are emerging. Yep, our map's not working. There it is. All right, so first let's look at milkweed, because we know that the monarchs need to lay their eggs on milkweed plants. So if the milkweed isn't there, what are the monarchs going to do? So we're going to look at the first sighting of milkweed. And here's our map. You can see that there are green dots on the map, and the lighter colored dots are the ones that are the oldest. So those are the oldest sightings, and the darker colored dots are the most recent. So Bill's going to click on this one in New Mexico. Let's look at that one. If they have a white circle, it means that that person also posted a picture. So you can see a little picture of the milkweed in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it looks like that person saw the milkweed on April 26th. But probably, judging by the size of it, that milkweed was around for a little while. Maybe it's a 2-week-old plant. I don't know. So let's go back and see if they see any monarchs in New Mexico. Let's look at the first adult sighted in New Mexico. Again, we get all our green dots, and we're going to click on this one in Albuquerque. It looks like someone saw a monarch butterfly on April 17th in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now that milkweed that we saw was probably a lot smaller, but monarchs can lay their eggs even on the very first sprout of a milkweed. And as that milkweed grows, the eggs just stick to it. And when the eggs hatch, the teeny tiny little caterpillars just start eating the milkweed. So those are lined up. Early April in New Mexico, you've got milkweed and you've got monarchs. And they're just paired up just perfectly.
Yeah, so another example of a good relationship between our birds and our insects that we kind of talked about in the video is our earthworms and our robins. So first we're going to look at our earthworm map here. And right in Colorado, we have a sighting. Let's see. Looks like that sighting was in Vail on April 1st. So that person was able to see some earthworms coming up for the first time. And now let's look and see if we can find when we were spotting our robins.
Let's look at the robin's first heard singing, because a lot of times you don't actually see the bird, you hear it.
Perfect. So right in Colorado, another sighting, and that robin sighting was coincidentally also on April 1st. So it's interesting just to see how related those two species are. As soon as we start to see the earthworms, we also start to see our robin friends coming along to eat them. So yeah, don't forget you can also be part of the citizen science of Journey North by joining the website. Do you know anything about?
They give you all the directions. It's really a great website, and they've been around for a long time. They've been tracking the monarchs. That's why our conservation organizations know a lot of the information that they do know. It's because citizens, just normal citizens like you and me, join projects like this where they give you all the resources you need to be a part of this big study. And because of Journey North, we know that monarchs are on the decline. And sadly, last year in July, they were put on the endangered species list. So let's see if we have any questions from our audience.
Heather asks, how long do monarch butterflies live?
Oh, that's a really good question, Heather, and a complicated one. So most of those monarchs that you saw migrating in the movie where they just kept going north, those live for just a short time, 2 to 6 weeks. They lay their eggs, the caterpillars eat milkweed, they go into a cocoon and they come out as an adult butterfly, and they fly a little ways north, and then they lay their eggs, and they only live for 2 to 6 weeks. But that last generation, the 4th generation, that is the farthest north, they do not lay eggs. When they're born, when they become butterflies, they just start heading back to Mexico. And they fly all the way down to Mexico and spend the entire winter there. And then when spring comes, they head north and they lay their eggs, the first ones that you saw, like in New Mexico. So that last generation, that 4th generation, can live almost a year, about 9 months. And if you think about it, you have to remember that those butterflies were never in Mexico. They're the great grandchildren of butterflies that overwintered in Mexico. So how do they know where to go? It is one of the great mysteries.
That is super interesting.
Yeah.
Bradley asks, what good are monarchs if nobody can eat them?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question as well. So we talked about monarchs are poisonous, and most of our birds don't like to eat them, except for our black-headed grosbeak. But the monarchs actually serve another really important purpose, and that is they are great pollinators. So we like to think of our bees as really good pollinators, but there's actually lots of insects, butterflies, beetles, all kinds of different things that also act as pollinators. So they are really important for our plants.
Oh, Everett just asked, what is a pollinator?
Yeah, so a pollinator is, well, let's see, Anne, can you help me answer that question?
Well, I was going to say it's an insect, but actually even bats can be pollinators. It's
Yeah.
any animal that transfers pollen from one flower to another. And that's how flowers make seeds. They need to be pollinated. Some plants are pollinated by the wind, but lots and lots of plants, most of our plants need to be pollinated by an animal, like a butterfly or a bee or a fly or a bat.
Ambry asked, how long are the Miller moths going to be here?
Ooh, good question. Those Miller moths, they're very annoying, but they are excellent food for our birds. So we appreciate that they're here. And you know what? They're just flying past us. They're on their way west to the mountains, and we're about 1 week into that migration. So they should be around Pueblo just for another week, and then they'll be past us, and they'll be on their way to the mountains where they drink nectar from wildflowers.
Shelby asked, where can I buy plants that support the monarch butterflies?
Yeah, so great question. We talked about our plant sale that we actually have here at the Pueblo Zoo on the 20th this weekend from 9 to 3. So that's a great opportunity where you can come buy some plants. You might even see me and Ann there also buying some plants.
For sure.
But if you can't make it to that, you can also check your local nursery, and they have milkweed and other wildflowers that also support our butterflies.
Just make sure that they are native Colorado wildflowers. Any other questions? No? Well, thanks for watching. We'll be back on June 6th. In June, we are celebrating the oceans. So see you then. Bye.